what's going on, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are in the Progressive War Room with my man Stephen Holder, and we're going to get right to it.
So it's Steve Holden.
Holden, I feel like I always say Holder. Did you notice that before? And
I'll tell you, Adrian, there was a lady on a local political show who did the same thing. So it's. Don't worry about it.
My guys, I have the show Political Junkies every Monday, and my guys will tell you I am horrible with names.
Don't worry about it, man. You're
butchering names.
We're cool, Adrian. No worries about that, man.
Tell us about your campaign, please.
Absolutely. So we're running here in what is currently known as New York 24. And New York 24 is an interesting district as it currently sits. It is one of two congressional districts in the country who voted 9+ points for President Biden, but has a Republican member of Congress. Now, I believe also there's one out in California that's the same way. This particular district is unique in the fact that individual he won 4 elections. His name is John Katko. Now, big news that just came out here recently is that he's not in the race anymore. He is retiring. He is one of the Republicans who did vote for impeachment, did vote to certify the election, and Trump and his movement have had a big target on his back for a long time. As a matter of fact, Trump put out over the weekend a tweet that said, another one bites the dust when it comes to John Katko. He painted himself as a moderate, even though he really wasn't. He voted with President Trump 95% of the time. But in the cult that is now the Republican Party, that's not good enough. So he is just now left the race. This district is going through it. We're going through redistricting because the state of New York is losing a congressional seat because 88, this is why it's important to fill out your census forms. 88 people in the great state of New York did not fill out their census forms, and that has led to statewide redistricting. In the race currently, there are now with Congressman Katko retiring, as the district currently sits with 4 counties, Onondaga, which is where I live, which is better known as Syracuse. This is the Syracuse metro area, basically. Cayuga County, which is Auburn, which is the second largest city. Wayne County, which is our most rural district, but ironically has a strong enclave of progressives. And then Oswego County, which is cut in half. We tend to have the more progressive part of it, or at least the more democratic part of it, with SUNY Oswego up there, another college within the district. Again, this district has historically at the presidential level went Democratic. It went for President Obama by 15 points back in the day. So this district has the potential of being bright blue. In the primaries, this bodes well for progressives, as the progressive candidate in the last 2 cycles beat the establishment candidate. Her name is Dana Balter. She won the last 2 elections up here by sizable margins. She's won them by 30, 35 points plus the last 2 times. And the last thing I'll say about this district is this is also one of the lowest voter turnout districts in the country. And if I explain to you why, I could take a picture right outside my window here to show you the blanket of snow on the ground. People don't like to get out and vote. Even people, Central New Yorkers, been here their entire life. People such as my wife, who have been here their entire life, don't like getting out and voting in the snow in November.
So, Steve, that brings me to this question, because I've been an advocate personally of mail-in voting. I actually think my philosophy on voting is like what they're doing in Washington State, where they have like a statewide mail-in voting system. And I debated this with my wife.
And like, Oregon does it too. Oregon,
it just makes sense. You don't even need, now you should have booths and the polling stations as a backup, like more like a plan B. So let's say somebody's homeless, but I'm like, hopefully we solve the homeless issue. But let's say until then, if somebody's homeless, they need some place to vote. But as long as you have a home and you are registered and everything, should get that envelope, fill it out, send it in. It should be like FedEx, where you can track it. You could go online and you could track your vote all the way up until the actual vote. And that solves everything. What you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. That's a big part of our campaign, Adrian, is that, and I know you also did as part of the gauntlet, you interviewed another member of my team, Marcus Cooper. Just a fantastic individual. I wouldn't be able to do what I can do without him. He also helped on down in the city on Congresswoman Yvette Clark's campaign down there. Just great individual. He's part of it. We have an initiative for no excuse absentee voters here in the district. Hey, let's make it easier. Let's hope and pray that we get these two pieces of voting rights legislation through this week. I can think of no better way to honor Dr. King than by doing that. But that's a big part of our plan, is to have that no excuse early voting. And I actually think that's a better idea to do it the way you do there. It's like, okay, hey, maybe I've been busy, we all are. Okay, I've got to get down to the voting booth today. Or some people just like to do that. Some people just like to go vote in person, and that's fine.
Because some people don't trust that their vote is going to get counted. But I think that if we have like a FedEx, even Amazon, any delivery system has that system where you can track your vote when it goes through the system. Like, oh, it just reached the depository, or just reached the post office, and it just reached the actual election board. Oh, now it was counted. And here's an ID, a unique ID to me that nobody else has to know, but I know that's my ID, and that's the way I voted, right?
Very much, Adrian. And
and you could call me Case. Call me Case on the show, because I'm anonymous online. Yeah.
All right, Case. Well, Case,
I didn't tell you. I forgot to tell you before.
No worries. Yeah. But Case, here's the thing, and for voters and supporters, donors across the country to know about it. All three of us, all three Democrats in this race, we're all veterans. In fact, I'm Army. Another one's Navy. Another one's Air Force. So whichever one you want to pick. But something that I've done in the past. Being in the military is that's the way a lot of service members vote, or people who might be in the foreign service, in the State Department or USAID. That's the way they vote, is by mail-in ballots. You watched the election night, back in 2020, they talked about those overseas military ballots coming in, or in other places in the United States where they'll have a voting assistance officer to do that. And by the way, something to let you know is under the Trump administration, they gutted voting assistance officers across all services. So that's something I would look to get legislation through to give money to the services to have voting assistance officers. Because if you're protecting the Constitution, you want to exercise your constitutional right to be able to go vote.
And just for those who don't know, explain to what did they do exactly?
The voting assistance officer, they give information to service members on when primary and general elections are going to be done, registering They also will tell them just kind of what the calendars are, when they need to get their ballot postmarked.
So how does it work, Steve? Let's say, if you're overseas, let's say you're in Afghanistan, is that off assistant? Are they on site, or are they like a designated person in the United States that you can call and ask a question?
Both.
So, oh wow. Okay.
So here's the thing: there will be a person assigned to the installation, and regardless of what service you are, that's going to be assigned to the installation whose primary duty is for that. So that you're going to have a centralized individual that's going to take care of that. But you're also going to have someone generally assigned as an additional duty. A lot of times it's an officer handling it, or enlisted that's handling administrative duties, who's also going to act as that when you're forward, to say, oh, hey, I'm a resident of Syracuse, New York. Hey, the primary is coming up, let's just say for sake of argument, June 15th. They're gonna get that information to anybody here who lives in that district or in the state of New York, so they're able to get a ballot and be able to mail it back in. And so we'll go through a mail processing mail processing center, either in Germany if you are in Europe, Middle East, Central Asia area, or somewhere over in Korea if you're in more of the Pacific Rim area. If you're over in Korea or Japan, it'll go there, and then it'll get back here to the United States, and in a specific period of time. And generally, states will give additional periods of time for military mail-in ballots, generally about 10 days. So when we saw that with the Trump administration, griping about mail-in ballots and how late they were getting in, they were going to potentially disenfranchise a lot of military voters, a lot. And in the ones in Georgia, the ones that came in were overwhelmingly from the Atlanta metropolitan area, which a lot of those folks are people of color in those areas, because the military does have a large segment of their population who are particularly in the enlisted ranks. So it's a part of voting rights people don't talk a whole lot about, but it is something that, we're making sure everybody has the chance. That's another thing that we need to protect and address, and give the funds to be able to do that. So that's a unique part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So excellent. I want to go on to the part. Everyone in the chat, Steve Holden is a People's Gauntlet contender, or not a contender yet, but he's going through the gauntlet. But he's going to be a contender, because I'm proud to announce that he's completed all 5 gauntlets. Now it's just on case to edit the videos and get it out there. But my man Steve is officially, I could declare on this show that he's a contender. But like I said, I'm going to be eventually getting the videos out there, and then once it's all done, he'll officially have his face on the peoplesgauntlet.com website, and he'll be out one of the latest additions to the PG crew. But I was talking to you during the People's Gauntlet that we were doing, and you were talking to me about one of the issues that grassroots candidates have when it comes to redistricting. So every 10 years, there's the census, and then there's redistricting. And then the disadvantages that progressives or grassroots candidates, period, have is that we don't know what the new map is. And you don't even have a date as of right now when you're going to get your map drawn, because we have to go through mailing out the mailers, or even if you have enough money to do TV ads, or you have to be strategic on how you pinpoint and get the vote. And if they wait to the last minute, the only person that kind of advantage is the establishment, who has a lot more resources. So go ahead, Steve, tell us about
sure case. And so you and I have talked about this a good bit. So for those of you out there that don't know, or for those of you in New York, you're well familiar with it. For those of you who are not, the state of New York, we really don't know what's going on right now. So we had an independent districting. So just to kind of give you a case, give you and the folks at home just a background of what's going on. By the 15th, they're supposed to have it to the state assembly. Well, imagine that. The Republicans and the Democrats on the committee couldn't agree on what the maps should look like. So what's going to happen is one of those is going to go, it's going to be turned over to the state assembly to draw the maps. There are some maps that are very Democratic leaning in this area, some more moderately. Then you had a compromise map, and then you had a map that was proposed by the Republicans. Now with Congressman Katko's retirement, we think that we could be looking at a completely different map that could be out there. So after the state assembly does that, then it'll go up through to Governor Hochul for her signature. And then but most likely what will happen is the Republicans will sue, and there's a great chance it's going to be drawn by a federal district judge, like it was 10 years ago when the maps came out. And within the New York Constitution, it says communities of like interests must be in the same district. Now, this goes for both for congressional and for state house, which is also out there. And I'm working with a number of state house candidates who are that I'm endorsing and working with, who are in the exact same boat. They're like, what in the world I don't even know what my district's going to look like. The same thing with me. The real issue there becomes, whereas I've been endorsed by people like Marianne Williamson and Blue America, another gentleman, Paul Nichols, who is running who's a state senator out of Queens, who's running for governor. Whereas we're the only one to have endorsements like that, and the only one that's been on national media so far, besides the People's Gauntlet and being on here with you, Case, is that what we see consistently across the country, those endorsements and the money that comes in are only going to come in after we have seen the lines. So whether that is well-known progressives here in the state of New York, most of whom the viewers probably know who we're talking about, folks like AOC, Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, people like that. And ones across the country are in a wait-and-see mode, because if you have progressive versus progressives, like you said, Case, don't have the money that establishment candidates in the two major parties have. They just don't have it. So they have to be more strategic with the money they have. Now, those particular progressive campaigns have a lot more grassroots support and generally perform better in the primaries. But it is a disadvantage when you're doing your FEC filings and people say, oh, you only have $100K in the bank. What's going on? Well, it's like, well, we're progressive. Progressives don't have a bigger slice of the pie to go with. So when you're in that situation, and if this keeps exactly. Yeah, it's by design. It just keeps walking down the road. For example, in 2020, the progressive candidate, Dana Balter, was outraised by almost $250,000 by the establishment candidate who's running again, who's making the same mistakes he made last time. Outraised by $250,000, and she won by something like 35%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in the one before that, she won by about the same margin. She won 2/3 of the votes. So where you see where the voters are is not where the money is. I'd say a better argument, if you want to see where a vote, how popular a candidate is actually take a look at the number of contributions he or she is getting, and then divide that in. That actually shows probably more support, because we're getting money from college students, people on fixed incomes. If I get $50 from somebody on a fixed income, that means more to them than somebody who's making $300,000, $500,000 a year or more. If they give me the max $2,800.
So 100%. Okay.
And so I think that's a better way. And I think that's a way that we need to start taking a look at it. And when it comes to that, I have more individual donors than other folks. and more repeat small dollar donors, much the way that Bernie did, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, folks like that. So it looks very similar to it. But that is a disadvantage, what you're talking about. The longer that the process delays, the more that it happens, and it is it's incredibly frustrating from just a logistic standpoint. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a question, and that I was going to wait till later, but I think I can ask you right now. But before I ask you that question, I just want to go to the chat, show some love to the chat. We got my super producer Bendone is in the chat. PJ Chris, PJ Holly. We got Abel is in the chat. Pittsburgh Dude 87 and PJ Hollyhorn, Inventor MJM. Thank you all for coming in the chat. And somebody made a mention of here we go. I just want to read this real quick. You should try to have Greg Pastor from Convo Couch to talk about some of the security and transparency concerns about mail-in ballots. So I would definitely be interested in finding out, both sides. I'm pro mail-in ballots, but I would like to hear what's the cons or what issues can arise, because maybe we could come up with a solution for it right there. And go ahead.
I was going to say we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
If there are issues, let's make them secure, but we need to give people that opportunity, because there are folks out there, as I said in a debate, at more of a forum the other night with the other two candidates, is that, there are people out there who have to work all day, have to find, childcare to be able to go vote, they might have medical issues, people such as my wife, who has benign positional vertigo that can only stand for so long as she tends to get dizzy and spin. We need to give that opportunity. So if we want to I think we should work to make them more secure, but not, eliminate them like what the right wants to do, or significantly reduce them. But making them more secure, absolutely. But we don't.
Yeah, I've heard people say like, oh, there might be like an abusive husband that is going to bully their wife to vote a certain way. And I think that's why hopefully you still need that polling booth option, right? So that she can say, oh, I didn't get a chance to vote in the mail, or I didn't get to fill it out. I'm just going to go in to the actual booth. And now she can kind of really have a secure vote without having to show the way she voted. But I want to ask you about the way a grassroots campaign, how they function. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently with my involvement with the Revolutionary Blackout Network and getting to know those guys. They're really on mutual aid. That's really their focus, and like building up community. And I was thinking like grassroots, and I know it's late in the game for you, but grassroots candidates, progressives, should really think about building an infrastructure that is year round, meaning that you don't just start when the election season comes around to try to start building for a particular candidate, but maybe there's an infrastructure year round, building community, building mutual aid, where people are helping each other out. That when election season comes around, that infrastructure could say, okay, let's run a Steve Holden. And now you have a base of volunteers, you have a base of neighbors who are already helping each other out. What I mean by that, Steve, is like, let's say you're having your volunteers knocking on doors, right? They go and they have your pamphlet in hand and they have your t-shirt on, but they're knocking on the door and they say, hey, I'm here to let you know about Steve Holden, but I want to know, is there anything that we can help you out with? What's going on with your immediate life? Do you have a big furniture? Maybe you live by yourself and you have a big furniture that you need to be taken out to to be taken out. We can help you out with that. Maybe we can't mow your lawn every month, but maybe one time you need help with a specific thing. Maybe you need a plumber. And we just found out that this neighbor down the street is a plumber, and they might be able to help. Like kind of building that kind of community. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea. And the way that we're kind of doing it now is you have to do a lot of leveraging. The good thing, we're about ready to enter into an agreement with the High School Democrats of America, as I've been involved with helping progressives get elected for over 30 years. And it's really getting that this next generation of voters are extremely progressive. That's something that you have to remember. And so we're building up an infrastructure with them to do exactly that. So the other thing that you remember, it's getting out in the community and doing that, and leveraging social media to be able to do that and kind of target that even more. So we're going to do a lot of virtual door knocking and actual here in the area. Once we get some more people on ground, we just got to make sure it's, the weather's nice to do that. But no, I absolutely agree. I think that one, especially because a lot of progressive candidates are very community oriented and activist oriented. And that goes right to that, helping, folks who may have issues, shut-ins, delivering meal. Hey, you're having issues getting food to you. Hey, let me get you in contact with some people here locally who can help you out. Let's say a Meals on Wheels, so forth and so on. And the great part here in Syracuse is the Syracuse Peace Council really does a lot. They do a lot of work with some intersectionality with groups like that to help more disadvantaged or populations here. Particularly, we have a large immigrant community here that people often ignore. They know they're there. They don't engage with them. And we're really the only campaign that's been engaging with those communities right now. So
I feel like a lot of times progressives, sorry to cut you off, but
no, it's okay.
Progressives, a lot of times we ask for your donations. I get the text messages all the time, which is fine. We ask for your donations. We want your vote, but then when it's time for you to reciprocate that, whether it's through the People's Gauntlet, whether it's going back on independent media, we've seen people who get elected and before they were elected, they go on independent media, TYT or Revolutionary Blackout Network or any of the places that have politicians and of the vanguard, but then they never go back to those same places once they get elected. So it's like it seems a lot of times these candidates are for self, but I like Bernie. At first I didn't like it, but I got used to it and they've grown on me, and now I lifted up the "Not Me, Us" slogan that Bernie had. Go ahead.
And we've adopted that here.
Yeah.
It's not me but us, not I but we, and letting them know, hey, this campaign's about you. It's about lifting you up, addressing your issues, addressing things that have been never addressed before, either Central New York or nationwide. And that's the unique thing about running for Congress is you really have to take a look at it, not just with your own constituency, but you're making policy that's going to change the lives of people across the country. So you have to have a focus on both of them. But you're exactly right. And I can make this promise that if elected, I'm still going to come back to independent media because I believe that that's where the future is. We can do everything from looking at what you're doing here or what TYT's done on a broader scale. What's Up News, I've been on with them, with Lana and what she's doing over there. I'm going to be one of those folks that's going to come right back on it, except it's going to be in my, congressional office. You're doing the interview out of here, where I'm telling you about, upcoming legislation, things that we're getting through. So where you're actually hearing it from the horse's mouth, rather than, on a press release, kind of just a cold press release that we're going to give to the paper or whatever. I'm going to get on some of these shows, such as yourself, Case, and come and talk about what that is. I think that's the best way of doing it.
Appreciate that. I know Ro Khanna is probably the best example that we can point to, that he just goes everywhere. You might not like what he's saying. That's what I like. At least give us your honest opinion, even if we don't like it. I want to know where you stand in your mind on the views. And a lot of times we, on the progressive left or on the leftist, we kind of dog him for certain takes, but he goes everywhere. So got to give him credit.
Exactly. Ro goes everywhere. I'm also a big follower of Tom Hartman, and he goes, he goes on Tom a lot between people like he and Mark Pocan and other people with the Congressional Progressive Caucus will go on there. And of course, if elected, I will belong to the Congressional Progressive Caucus as well. But that's the great point there, Case, is that we have to remember where we came from. And there's so many politicians that are out there who might get started with independent progressive media. And when they get to the House or the Senate, they forget about it. That's not going to be what we are. I mean, and have my word on it. Because again, like I said, I believe this is where the future of media is going. And I think that's a more direct way to deal and work with constituents and build a movement across the country, because that's really what this is all about. It's not just Central New York.
Thank you so much. So I have a bunch of questions that I had beforehand, but I have questions in the chat. So I definitely want to give attention to the questions in the chat. And I just saw Inventor MJM. You said Tom's chat is whack. So I don't know what you mean. Is his chat room is whack, or is Tom Hartman you're saying is whack? And I have to credit Tom myself with, I used to be a Ron Paul supporter. That's how I got into politics, as far as, a libertarian Republican. And I listened to Tom Hartman back in those days in 2007, 2008. And he actually brought me over to the progressive side, listening to him. And then they had brunch with Bernie every Friday.
Yes, he did.
Come on. Yeah.
He had Bernie before Bernie was cool.
Yes, exactly.
He did. In fact, he often calls Bernie a national treasure.
Yeah, he called him like the nation's senator, because he was addressing you could call in and just ask Bernie a question like anybody could. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way that I take a look at it. So like I said, I'm looking at kind of in 3 or 4 different constituencies besides just here in Central New York. Folks there who are with us today may not know is I'm also Native American. I'm Cherokee and Cheyenne. So that's another constituency that I'd love to reach out for and be a voice for. Veterans, needless to say, and of course progressives writ large. And those are things that are very important to me. And I know those other representatives and senators out there, the ones who truly kind of go back to what Bernie does, that's why they do it, is to go back and you may not agree with them, but you know where they stand and you know that they're going to listen to you. And
awesome.
That's kind of them, and a lot of times that's what people want, is they want to be heard. And if they're not being heard, they might go to places that you don't want them to go and that are detrimental. So that's why I do it.
Exactly. All right. So this question from Pittsburgh Dude 87: would this guy vote, Stephen, would he vote for current voting rights legislation, even though the provisions that would hurt, there are provisions that would hurt third parties? And I've heard that about some of the voting legislation. I don't know which one. I know there's the John Lewis Act, and then there's another one. The
For the People Act. I'll tell you this. One of the things that I think would help is something, Case, you and I talked about, which is ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
I think that would help third parties because there's not the trepidation of putting them on the ballot, and those are things there. So I would look to kind of reform it. I call this a start. I call both of these bills a start. And I would go back and make the correction for third parties. What people may not know here in Syracuse is this is where Howie Hawkins is from. His office is people may or may not know he ran for party in the Green Party here.
Yeah.
And he's downtown, not far from the other two major party headquarters, and they would. And here in New York, that would help even more, because in New York, for those of people who don't know, we have fusion voting. So if you're a candidate, you can get the nomination of multiple parties.
Yeah.
And if you are on the left side, you work for the Democrats and the Working Families Party, which is a little bit more on the progressive end. If you're a Republican, you get that plus generally the Conservative Party. Sometimes the Reform Party will come in on that too. So in both particular cases, I think that it would help third parties. We have ranked choice voting, and we would fix those provisions for third parties. So it's so paramount right now that we combat gerrymandering and we combat all of just the racist policies, not just against the African American community. In the Native community, require them to have addresses on reservations. What people don't know is a lot of times on reservations, you don't have addresses.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that's what happened in North Dakota a few years ago because they wanted to take that Senate seat. So you see it happen in places like that. We need to get that taken care of. Absolutely. But then I would introduce legislation to help, third parties get on and make it easier for them to get on the ballot. Because, if not, you're going to be, you could potentially, in a lot of races, where the progressive gets kind of measured out, there needs to be a way for them to get measured back in. Just because they didn't get through a party primary process that's skewed. Oh, and one more thing about what happened last cycle here, it kind of going on to that, is that in New York, there was a lot of complaints in the Democratic primary back in 20 that it hurt progressives. You heard a lot of things coming from Bernie's campaign. It was just not very well managed at all. And even in the primary that was skewed toward establishment, the establishment candidate last time still lost by 35%. So that just tells you how skewed this district is for progressives. And if we do get Ithaca, which many folks may not know, that's Cornell University, could get an Ivy League school in. That's even going to turn it even brighter progressive that's there. So that's why not just on the side of the spectrum, but for the progressive left, this is an iconic seat to get because it can also prove that progressives can win upstate.
All right, I got it.
And then this would be the prime example of it.
Awesome. Got another question from the chat. Inventor MJM said, by calling yourself progressive, are you making it more difficult for yourself? We should get all kung fu with our language. Words like citizen, independent, constituents are harder to polarize. And one thing I would like to say with this comment is I've noticed more and more that like Fox News, even CNN, they're just demonizing the word progressive. And I would understand if you can justifiably blame progressives for certain things. Like if you blame us for popularizing Medicare for all, I'll take that blame. But they're blaming us for all sorts of other things that I'm like, wait a minute. This is like, so for example, today, I just clipped a clip on Case Study QB and put it out there that they were blaming us for the Democratic policy of leaving kids, of making sure kids are remote or at home last year. And the point that we're all coming to the conclusion now is that it's it's unhealthy for kids to be at home, not socializing, not getting those essential learning things that they need when they're in school. And they're now figuring that out. But now they're going back and blaming progressives for this policy when it was Democrats.
So here's the thing. Progressives we need to do better with our messaging. That's the big thing. And that's why getting on places like here help. I don't have a problem calling myself progressive because progressive policies are popular. When you have to pay your premium every month and pay your copays and go down and pay for your prescriptions, ideas like Medicare for all and the government negotiating for drug prices becomes a whole lot more popular.
So that's the argument, Steve, that we also have been talking about in the progressive community. Should we try to co-opt the word moderate because our policies are popular? They're, Medicare for all, 70%, et cetera, et cetera. Is it something that we should say, hey, we have the popular ideas. We're the real moderates. We have the popular ideas. What do you think?
No, I think if you look at us on kind of a worldwide political spectrum, we are part of what's really called the radical center. It's actually, this is more so being a social democrat than anything else. If you take a look at that kind of mantra, but we need to be abundantly clear as progressives, as we call ourselves now, that a lot of these failed programs are not because of progressives, or reasons that policies aren't getting pushed through is not because of progressives. The problem is coming from establishment of both parties. It's the entirety of one party that has went just, and I'm just going to say it right here, it's went full fascist. One party has.
You got that right. Yeah,
they're not interested in governing. So basically, you're going with one hand tied behind your back.
Yeah, I personally think a strategy the Democrats should have done, like when they first got, Biden first came into office and everybody, they should have said, "Hey, these guys are not. We can't work with these guys. They didn't even want to certify the election, and kind of force Sinema and Manchin's hand to say, hey, if you want to work with them, you're working with fascists. You're the same, kind of go. So we have to do everything on our own and come out the gate swinging."
That's exactly what we need to do. And just call it what it is. It's like, look, if the Republicans are not going to support anything, even the moderate ones, on items that might actually help them in their state or district. Case in point there with Lisa Murkowski up there, ranked choice vote, which is the way Alaska does it. But if you get more people out to vote, it's going to keep that right-wing lunatic up there from winning. But you take a look at these particular cases, we do need to call it and say, hey, look, it's not progressives that are causing these problems. It's the establishment. And Joe Manchin goes, well, if you want more progressive policy, elect more progressives. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
There are plenty of progressives running across this country in Senate races, and you can go out there and take a look at them, whichever one fits what you want, your viewpoint. But yeah, okay, fine.
But unfortunately, I know when you have like Joe Manchin saying, "Oh, if you want more progressives, run more progressives," and then they turn around and collude behind the scenes with, in West Virginia to sabotage someone like Paula Jean Swearengin, who did run and won the primary, but then when it came to getting the Democratic Party of the state, the establishment to get behind her and help her finish the race, they didn't help her, and they more than likely sabotaged her. So, they know what they're doing behind the sneens.
And West Virginia is also another state that has very low voter turnout. And what people there, I don't know if some people remember this. West Virginia used to be a bright blue state, bright blue, and because it had a strong union and a strong union background. And that the voters there were more educated on the issues that would help them. Well, when the union busted, that's when West Virginia made not just a right turn, a hard right turn, and especially when they start getting told about the other. So those people who are Democrats in that area started voting rightward. And always remember that when we'd see things about Trump and say, oh, well, why is he receiving 4% support from Democrats? It should be 100%. He didn't receive any. Well, it's from places like that. It's from Appalachia.
100%.
Where they are.
We're sorry to cut you up, but we have our last 6 minutes. I want to get you out of here at 1. And thanks for everybody in the chat as well. And let's see if we can do a rapid fire. All right, so first question first. Biden 20. Should a progressive primary Biden in 2024? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Do you have anybody in mind?
Go ahead. Anyway. I think it's going to happen anyway.
It's going to happen. Yeah. And do you have anybody in mind? And if you don't, what do you think about the suggestion that Marianne Williamson, they had Nina Turner was out there? What you think?
And for those who don't know, I have been endorsed by Marianne. I've been endorsed by her since August. So I'm also the only person this campaign's been endorsed by a presidential candidate, along with a New York State gubernatorial candidate. I would absolutely support that, because if you look at her idea and her track record, she's standing for progressive values. And if it's not Marianne, Sister Nina, I think would do a fantastic job. Her and if you listen to her, she has no problem speaking the truth.
Exactly.
There is no fear in that woman.
Yeah.
And,
so the next question, should the progressive run on executive orders? Because this is something that I know me and my political junkies a couple weeks ago, I advocate. You know what? I'm not going to lead the witness. What do you think about the progressive running on executive order?
Running on executive orders as in
so meaning
more of them?
As president, you can by yourself forgive the federal student loan debt.
Oh yeah.
You could put marijuana on schedule. You can take it off of Schedule 1, I believe that's the term, but basically legalize it federally.
Yeah,
and then other things. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely support that. I've been consistent, and for those of you, you'll see in my gauntlet when I'm talking about economics and economic justice, you'll hear me talking about, and I'll consistently hear in kind of foreign student loan debt. What do you want to do about it? I go, pressure the president to within a stroke of a pen, eliminate student loan debt. I put my son, daughter, and stepson through college, and two of them received every dollar they got from scholarships, 9/11 GI Bill, whatever. It still had to take out that money just to survive, and they all worked. So that's one. Two, ensuring that particularly communities of color, like here in South Syracuse and on the reservation, have access to government priority on government contracts, even more than what they have. That's a stroke of the pen that goes into the federal acquisition regulation and the federal registry. So you have go in and, like I said, descheduleize marijuana or any other type of drug that could be out there. That could be done at the stroke of a pen. Yeah. Protecting transgender rights in the military, stroke of a pen. All of these things can be done, and running with the idea of executive orders that are fully and it's not something radical. It's something that any president can do. For those who don't know, I teach finance and contracts at the federal government. And matter of fact, when this show's over, I'm going to be back to teaching the Department of Agriculture this week. And that's something I talk to them about is how easy it is to make changes there that can affect the federal government. So you're absolutely right. I think you could absolutely do that. You should do it. And whenever that breaks down, especially if you have an obstructionist Congress.
Yeah, so the worry is that the right wing or the Republicans will call you authoritarian. They will call you all these names in the books, and I think that's what I would say. Don't promise the world. Even though when you become president, now you can do whatever you want to do. There's a great David Dane has a whole in his American Prospect website. Yes, that he talks about all the different things that a president can do by himself. So while you're campaigning, don't promise the world, because then people might think, oh, I don't think he's believable. But just pick like a good 3 or 4, maybe even 5 executive orders and stick to that and say, hey, these are what when you get me, this is what you're going to get on day one.
And that's if that was the office I was going after, that's absolutely what I would take a look at. Is take about 3 or 4.
We need to demand that from our progressive. Hopefully, whoever that person is. I'm talking to different, the independent media people. I'm going to be talking to JB. By the way, everybody in the show, I'm going to go to JB's chat. If you're in the Discord, I'll post a post. But I'm going to be on JB's show at 2:00. But I'm going to be promoting this. Like, hey, we need to demand from our progressive champion, whoever that is, running in 2024. Because right now it doesn't seem like it's going to be a whole bunch of people. So hopefully it's going to be that one person that we can all galvanize behind. But we got to pressure that person to say, hey, we need you to do executive orders. Once you promise that to the people, they will definitely get on board. So anyway, we got 1 more minute. What else we got here? So I think I answered all the questions. All right. Marianne Williamson, people's going to, all right. This is awesome. Any last words that you want to talk about, Steve?
Hey, everybody out there, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm at @Believin_Steve on Twitter. I am at Holden for Congress on Facebook. We're going to be jazzing up our congressional site here coming up, but I am at believinsteve.org if you want to come. I want to volunteer. If you want to donate, you want to get involved, get connection with, get me in contact with other progressive candidates around the country. Feel free. You'll get a hold of our team. Yep, that's it right there. Okay. If you want to, see in my mug right there, And we will, you get to see my positions. They're standard progressive positions, and we'll go from there. So, hey, like I said, Case, thanks for having me on again. Let me know when I can, throughout this entire process, let me know when I can come on here again and talk about some unique issues that you and I have talked about in other forums before.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on the show. In the chat, thank you, Holly Horn, PJ Chris. Thank you, Abel. Thank you, Inventor MJM, and everybody else that was in the chat. Bendone, much love to you. And Steve, I really appreciate. I want to just say that Steve was the only person that was able to do 2 gauntlets in like one sitting. Usually, I do like an hour, and I do a gauntlet in an hour. He's able to. I mean, he was made for this. Let me say that he was made. All the different poly positions. And next time we're going to talk about your involvement with the military and your knowledge with the budgeting and how we can have a show focused on how can we decrease the military budget, what would need to be done. And it's going to get real wonky, but I think that knowledge should be out there.
And here's the thing, for all the progressives out there, you need to know how to combat when the right comes back and says certain things. And I teach finance and contracts, like I said, for a living. I'm a retired Army finance officer. I know the way this works. And I've worked on auditing the federal government for 10, 12 years now. And so anything's on the table with that. When you see my gauntlet out there, the Case is going to put out, you'll see my points on it. And I can go as deep and as wide as you want to on those topics.
Yeah, I know you can.
So
thank you so much.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining today. Like I said, go to those places. Our contact information's on there. If you want to get involved, and in particular, if you're here in New York and in Central New York, that really is what we need. But hey, it's a long fight, and we've got about 9 more months of this. So again, Thank you, Abel. Thank you getting on here. Thanks everybody. Thanks Holly. Thanks everyone. And I'll see you back here on another time, Case, whenever you want me to swing back on here. And after elected, I'll just keep right on doing the same, just like Roe does.
Let's do it. Thank you, everyone. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and I appreciate that. Everyone have a great day. Hopefully see you at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Adios.
Thanks, everybody. All right, out here. Bye-bye.